Will you join me in our theme verse today from the New Century Version? Jesus said to all of them, "If people want to follow me, they must give up the things they want. They must be willing to give up their lives daily to follow me." As we sing our prayer for illumination today, it is the cry of my heart. You've sung the chorus enough now that I invite you to sing the chorus with me, and I will sing the first verse. Once, when large crowds of people were going along with Jesus, he turned and said to them, "Those who come to me cannot be my disciples unless they love me more than they love father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and themselves as well. Those who do not carry their own cross and come after me cannot be my disciples. If one of you is planning to build a tower, you sit down first and figure out what it will cost to see if you have enough money to finish the job. And if you don't, you will not be able to finish the tower after laying the foundation, and all who see what happened will make fun of you. You began to build but can't finish the job, they will say. If a king goes out with 10,000 men to fight another king who comes against him with 20,000 men, he will sit down first and decide if he is strong enough to face that other king. If he isn't, he will send messengers to meet the other king to ask for terms of peace, while he is still a long way off. In the same way," concluded Jesus, "none of you can be my disciples unless you give up everything you have." This is the word of the Lord. Counting. We count a baby's toes. We count the cars on the train. We count the years of age or marriage. We count the days until vacation. We count the attendance and the offering, and a whole lot of other things for our statistical reports. We count our blessings. But do we really want to count the cost of following Jesus? Too often we only want to look at the easy side of being a Christian. But to make a real commitment, to have full communion with Christ, there is a cost. And it's unfair to extend the invitation if we aren't going to point out the fine print. I want to start today with the story of Nicodemus, coming from the Gospel of John, chapter 3. Nicodemus was one of those Pharisees who talked about who tried to keep every law of God. But he was also interested in Jesus. So he came at night to learn more. Nicodemus was convinced that God indeed worked through Jesus. But Nicodemus also proceeded with caution. Now, for the sake of comparison, I want you to consider Andrew for just a moment, Simon Peter's brother. Because when Andrew first heard about Jesus, he followed him for a whole day to learn more. When Andrew then brought his brother to Jesus to meet him, and when he was invited to become a disciple, Andrew dropped his nets, left his boat, and followed Jesus for the next 3 years without any hesitation. Nicodemus came at night, so no one would see him. And he asked his questions, he engaged in conversation, and then he went back to his life as a Pharisee for quite a while. Nicodemus recognized the cost there might be in following this radical rebel rabbi. It would mean losing his prestige and his position. It might mean losing his friends and his colleagues and maybe even his family. It would mean losing everything he had spent a lifetime to earn. And Nicodemus wasn't ready to give all that up. Would you be? What has Jesus ever asked you to leave behind? Nicodemus was a secret admirer. He wasn't ready to make a commitment to follow Jesus. So think again about counting the cost, because commitment comes with a price tag. Here are some of Eidelman's considerations. Fans only want to touch it, but Jesus offers renovation. Fans only want a tune-up, but Jesus offers us an overhaul. Fans only want a little makeup. Jesus offers a complete makeover. Fans only want to decorate, but Jesus offers to remodel our lives. Fans only want to be inspired, but Jesus intends to interfere with an intervention. There used to be a show called Clean Sweep, and families were asked to sort through all of their stuff and get rid of quite a bit of it. Some went to sell, some to give away, some went into the trash, some they got to treasure. A lot of emotional baggage got dealt with at the same time. And meanwhile, 2 rooms of their house were renovated. And it was pretty awesome. I also like to watch Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and that went even further because complete homes were demolished because they were in bad condition. And beautiful new homes were built from the ground up and designed with the family who was going to live in them in mind. It's like that. Jesus isn't satisfied with giving us just a little bit of help and say that that's good enough. Jesus wants to make us a new person from the inside out. 1 Corinthians 5, verse 17 says that this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone. A new life has begun. But to receive those benefits, there is a cost, a surrender that is required. Eidelman says there's no forgiveness without repentance, no salvation without surrender, no life without death, and no believing without commitment. You know the joke that preachers only work an hour on Sunday morning, but too many Christians believe that that's all you need to give in your own lives. For me, to be a servant of Christ is 24/7, 365, all the time. And that doesn't mean I'm working every hour, but it means I have to be who I am in Christ, ready to serve as needed every hour of the day and night. In the same way, Jesus asks you to be more than a Sunday morning Christian, to to be an everyday follower whose commitment to Christ makes a difference in your words, in your work, in your actions and your activities and your attitudes. Because a follower submits everything to Christ. Some churches fail to make that clear. They're so big on numbers that they don't emphasize the benefits, or they only emphasize the benefits of Christ. And they put an emphasis on making a decision for Christ, but they fail to follow through on what it takes to be a full-time disciple. They may not coach you on counting the cost or the obedience and faithfulness. Pastor Cobb tells the story behind writing this book that we've been looking at, Not a Fan. It came about because he sat down in his sanctuary to work on his sermon for Easter Sunday. And he knew that this was the one day attendance would be really high, one of the highest attendance rates of the entire year. And so he wanted to preach a message that would bring people back. But somehow, God got through to him that it's not about the numbers. He needed to take his congregation deeper. And this book, this very challenging book on discipleship, comes out of the series of sermons he preached that Easter season, whether the visitors came back or not. It changed him, it changed his congregation, and it's changed many lives as people have read his book ever since. If you want to live in communion with Christ, one decision is just the beginning. It's how you live out that decision every day that really matters. That's commitment. So that's what Jesus was telling the crowd who were gathered that day, as we read about in our gospel lesson. And they were probably as shocked by his words as you and I might be, because in some translations it reads that they must hate their family. The translation we read sounds a little better, to love Jesus more than we love our family. But it's still difficult for us to comprehend what Jesus means by that. Because for many of us, growing up, church and God stuff was a family thing. I want you to take a look at it from a different perspective with me for a minute. My husband's grandmother was one of the first converts to Christianity in her tribal homeland of Nagaland. And she came to work for the American Baptist missionaries who had been sent there to the Naga Hills. When she accepted Christ and chose the life of a follower, she had no guarantee that her family or friends would accept her decision or welcome her back into their fellowship. In fact, her daughter disowned her. And she still had to reconcile her new Christian faith with her tribal beliefs and her experience. And that was tough, because she was the village medicine woman. Christianity did become well accepted among the Nagas, but that's not always the case, is it? At various times in history, it's been downright dangerous to be a Christian. It was in the Roman Empire of early Christianity. It has been in Russia, or China, or Nepal within our lifetimes. It's very dangerous to be a Christian in Syria today. And I learned from my daughter yesterday that in India, the new prime minister is trying to bribe people away from Christianity. In some places around the world, choosing to follow Jesus does mean giving up family, home, job. You're no longer welcome. If you put Jesus' words to the crowd that day in that context, it makes a lot more sense. But even in our culture, becoming a Christian sometimes is sneered at. Become a full, committed Christian follower, and that's viewed as an inconvenience. Other values vie for our time and our money and our energy and our intentions, our labor. I want to ask some questions to help us identify our commitment level. These are far more serious than the ones I shared the first week, so listen carefully. For what will you sacrifice your money? When you're hurt, where do you go for comfort? What disappoints or frustrates you the most? What is it that really gets you excited? Where you're willing to spend your money says something about your priorities. Where you turn for comfort, whether it's food or a friend or prayer, is where you might turn your devotion as well. If something has the power to frustrate or disappoint you, then it's become very important in your life. And it might put you out of balance or perspective. And the thing that excites you the most, well, if it isn't related to your faith, then it has the potential to take God's place in your life. We need to be honest with ourselves about these dangers. Because it's so easy to let the things of the world, even the good things and people and causes, to sneak into first place in our lives, and suddenly there's not much room left for God. Jesus' message to the crowd that day could fall under the label of truth in advertising, because Jesus is upfront and honest about the cost of following him. It will mean taking up our cross daily, not always easy to bear. But Jesus doesn't ask us to carry our cross alone. Think about these familiar words from Matthew 11. Come to me, all of you who are tired and have heavy loads, and I will give you rest. Accept my teachings and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in spirit, and you will find rest for your lives. The burden that I ask you to carry is easy, and the load I ask you to carry is light. To have communion with Christ, we have to make a commitment. And Jesus asks, if you're put in a position of having to choose between Jesus and your family, between Jesus and your friends, between Jesus and a job, between Jesus and your status, between Jesus and your culture, between Jesus and whatever is hardest for you to surrender. Which will you choose? May God help us every day to deny ourselves and choose to follow Jesus. Let's turn to hymn number 366 and offer ourselves to Christ as we sing.